Hi, welcome to the Reconnect Factor, the podcast of the Power Play Reconnect experience. It's a place right here to just rest, play a little, and reconnect to your unique, authentic, and creative self. I'm your host, Ruth Haskins. Today, I'm not going to start with a quote, but I'm going to talk about something that I think is all too prevalent, and it's something that we're not aware of. We live in a world where we are bombarded by things that are not of our own making. And they come directly into our own environment via the television, the internet, our cell phones. Sometimes we get bombarded because we hit the wrong button and we say, yes, sure, you can text me. And before you know it, you're just overwhelmed with texts from people and organizations that you've forgotten that you even had contact with. And I'm going to put these under the broad category of annoyances. Of late, when I am watching television, I notice that whenever commercials come on, I put the television on mute. There are certain programs that if I'm watching them, I will do the same thing, or I'll just change the channel. I notice that when I am in situations like in the grocery store, there are certain foods that I just don't eat anymore. And I see these things that are just fake food, so prevalent, so much in your face that it's an annoyance. And recognizing the fact that I'm annoyed by all this stuff that is just thrown at me is really important. And I think it's something that we all need to take a look at. We as humans are not intended to be overwhelmed by our environment. Even if you're out in nature, there is a level of calmness that comes. There's a level of oneness that shows up. And we can become very comfortable just sitting on a beach or sitting on a rock in the middle of a stream. We can become very comfortable in nature, just walking down a lovely path and taking in the sights and the sounds, just feeling the earth underneath our feet. There is nothing to annoy us. Now, there may be a bee that comes along while you're gardening, and you may, kind of draw back because, no one wants to be stung. But still, they're not an annoyance. They don't annoy us. Traffic annoys us. Bad drivers annoy us. And in one day of traveling back and forth, either to work or to carry out an errand, perhaps to go to the doctor's office, you will encounter multiple instances of people driving as if they have lost their minds, as if they're the only ones on the road. It is not just a feeling of irritation. There's a feeling of fear. And if we take time to just be able to go back and digest those moments when we had that encounter while we were driving, we'll find out that what we're really feeling is annoyed. There are just multiple annoyances. Driving down the highway and seeing where someone has just tucked their garbage onto the side of the road. Walking through our neighborhoods and seeing where people have made one central spot their place to smoke, and they just drop their cigarette butts. Whether we become fully conscious of it or not and focus on it, we still see it. And these things are annoyances. It's annoying. It's annoying when someone calls you and rather than ask about your well-being, about the well-being of your family, or what's going on in your life, they immediately begin to brag about all the things that they're accomplishing. And to be able to pull back enough to realize that the reaction that you're having is not really one of anger. You're just annoyed. And I say just annoyed as if that's unimportant. But those annoyances are sort of like the grain of sand underneath a saddle. It just rubs you the wrong way. And because we have so many of those things coming at us constantly, we find it very hard to walk away from it, to say that, okay, this is not important. This is, we don't do that. We take it in. There's a part of us that consciously recognizes it as something that's really bothering us. But because there's so much of it thrown at us every day, we tend to push it aside. We tend to make little of it. Or as the saying goes, our annoyance comes out sideways. It may have nothing to do with the person or the event that actually happened, but some poor soul gets read the riot act because you are annoyed about something else. So it's not an unimportant event in our lives. We really need to take the time to see the things that annoy us. And I think one of the best ways to begin to find that is to have a little playtime. Watch a little television. Watch the commercials and see which ones really annoy you. It will give you a barometer to be able to look at the things that you are encountering on a daily basis that are annoyances, that annoy you no end. And as you begin to pick out these different commercials or shows that you may be watching, and you begin to recognize that there's something in it that is just like having sand underneath your saddle. If you were a horse, it would just not feel right. You'll begin to identify it and be able to say, oh, this does not feel good. This does not make me feel good. It's getting on my nerves. I'm annoyed by it. So why am I watching it? Why am I allowing it into my life? This is really important. It may seem like a very small thing. To be annoyed is not to be angry. It's not to be vengeful or anything like that. It's an annoyance. And yet, it can become such a deep irritant that it really irritates your spirit. And anything that irritates your spirit cannot be good. So I encourage you this week to take a look at the things that annoy you. Make note of them. See if it's something that you can eliminate, or if you cannot not eliminate the annoyance, it may be your boss or a coworker or a family member. Take a look at how you can work with it, with the situation, the person, to be able to handle it in such a way that you're always conscious of the fact of the way they or it makes you feel. And then decide on what you're going to do with that feeling or that reaction, so that you're not constantly in a place of reacting or responding to that annoyance. If it's a commercial you don't like, mute it. Change the channel. If it's somebody that you really don't have to be around, find a way to not be around them. Not to avoid them, but simply not to be around them. This is more than just a thought. This is something that you can actually do as an exercise. Take a notebook, write the annoyances down, and see which ones you can either eliminate or find a way to work with so that they don't irritate your spirit. Again, more than just a thought, this is Ruth from the Reconnect Factor, the podcast of the Power Play Reconnect Experience. Thank you so much for listening.